Rev it up and welcome to Cars Yeah, show number 2277. Today we're talking with really a legend in the automotive sector. This gentleman's been around for a long time, worked for a lot of amazing companies, so be prepared to be inspired.
This is Cars Yeah, where you'll enjoy interviews with inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Mark Green is here to provide you with a fuel injection of automotive inspiration. So get in, sit down, buckle up, and get ready for a wild ride here on Cars Yeah.
Hello, inspiring automotive enthusiasts, and welcome to Cars Yeah. You know, it's a little rainy and cold out here in the Northwest, so I decided to go to Florida today, Jacksonville, Florida, and I'm with a very special guest by the name of Doug Evans. Doug, welcome to Cars Yeah. Do you have any gear, and are you ready to release the clutch?
I am, Mark. Let's do it.
We're going to have some fun. Now, before I give you an introduction, and you are what I would call an icon in the automotive industry. You've been around forever. You've been involved in so many cool things. But I wondered if you could share one little thing with our listeners that maybe people don't know about Doug Evans before we dive into what you're doing today.
Wow. The first thing that popped up into my head, we had a similar exercise once in a SEMA board meeting. And not knowing what else to surprise people with, I surprised them with the fact that when I was a kid, I was a violin player.
I've had a lot of guests on the show that are former or current musicians, and I think there's some relationship to cars and music. Obviously, there is in many cases. In fact, I even had John Oates, who's famous for music, who's quite the car guy, as a guest here on the show. But, you think back to ZZ Top and their relationship with cars, and Sammy Hagar, I Can't Drive 55. I mean, all these people. So, but the violin, a little more civilized, Doug.
Yeah. Well, especially when you're, 6'5" and 250, it doesn't really compute when you put it in your head. But yeah, it was a long time ago.
I love it. That's great. Well, let me give you a proper introduction. This introduction was hard to pare down because, my gosh, you've done so many things, but I'm going to give it a shot. Doug Evans has been in the specialty automotive aftermarket business for over 40 years. He is currently a senior advisor focusing on mergers and acquisitions for Radial Equity Partners, where they focus on investments in vehicle aftermarket companies. After a brief stint in the media department of Young and Rubicam, that's an advertising agency I've heard of many, many times, a desire to be closer to all things automotive moved Doug to the Peterson Publishing Company way back in 1983. I wasn't even married yet, where he remained for much of the following 3 decades, running multiple departments there. Doug also held positions as director of the board of development for Bonnier Corporation, executive vice president and COO for Lucan Communications, was the interim president and CEO of Crower Cams and Equipment, and interim president and CEO of Legendary Group and Coker Tires. Yeah, that little company. He has volunteered for SEMA for over 20 years in various positions and has been recognized with several industry awards, including the SEMA Person of the Year Award, ARMO Hall of Fame, SBN Athena Award, and he's a member of the prestigious SEMA Hall of Fame. Doug is also a recipient of the Lee Iacocca Lifetime Achievement Award. Your trophy case must be very full, my friend. We'll be back in just a moment, but first a word from our sponsors. So give them a little love, buckle up. We're with Doug Evans today. We're going to learn a lot. We'll be right back. Years ago, when it was time to renew my collector car insurance policy, my carrier's rates went up. Way up, but my usage was the same and I never made a claim. I didn't even have a ticket. So what's with that? So I turned to American Collectors Insurance. Has your collector car insurance recently raised your rates for no good reason? Tired of paying an annual membership fee? Then it's time to look around and call American Collectors Insurance. I shopped around, I asked friends for recommendations, and found a winner that I can trust. And boy, I'm glad I did. I saved hundreds of dollars every year and slept better at night knowing my baby was properly insured. American Collectors Insurance have been protecting vehicles since 1976. They provided me with an agreed value insurance policy backed by their history of taking great care of their clients. What could be better than that? So give them a call and ask for a quote today. 866-ACI-YEAH. That's 866-224-9324. And protect the ones you love like I did with American Collectors Insurance. Classic car insurance designed by collectors for collectors. Are you thinking about selling your classic or exotic car? Do you want to list your vehicle at an auction but aren't too sure about where or how to start. The pros at Classic.com, well, they can help you out. There's a lot involved in putting your car up for auction. And if you want to represent your ride in its best light, you'll need quality photographs, videos, plus an accurate and detailed write-up, not to mention being available to handle the tough questions from qualified buyers. The process can be a lot to deal with, and mistakes can cost you thousands of dollars. Your car is unique, and your marketing plan should be too. My friends at Classic.com, well, they're here to help. They'll handle all the details from an inspection, from a qualified professional, detailed photo shoot, an accurate written description, and your car will be represented to an extensive market by the pros at Classic.com. Be smart and do it right. Talk to a pro about selling your car today. Go to Classic.com/cars yeah. That's Classic.com/cars yeah. And tell them Mark sent you. For several years now, you've heard me talk about Linkage Magazine. I've been a subscriber since the start. Their talented and creative team brings you a spectacular publication and website that shares the automotive passion from a worldwide perspective. Linkage is about driving, restoring, collecting, and first-hand experience at collector car auctions and more. They bring you real-world values plus rational, experienced opinions on the current markets. They cover the automotive world and the people who share our passions. And Linkage Magazine has grown, mailing you 6 issues annually. Join me on this journey with Linkage. They're geared for the automotive life. You can subscribe at linkagemag.com. So, Doug, what a career, what a legacy, what a life. I would assume you probably know everybody in the industry, but I want to go way back for a brief moment here to the beginnings before we get into what you're doing today there at Radial Equity Partners. How you got into the automotive industry? Were you just a car guy from the time you were a little kid? What brought you into this industry? Because my gosh, you've touched just about everything.
Oh yeah, well I fortunately or unfortunately had an older brother who was a absolutely terrible driver. And about every 4 or 5 months when he first started driving, he would wreck a car and drag it home, and it would sit in the woods. And I started playing around with him and buying Peterson magazines to figure out how to fix them. I was 11 or 12 at the time and really started getting into it. And by the time I was 15, 16 years old, I had a pretty good body shop going in my parents' garage.
Oh, wow.
And my brother continued to be a terrible driver, so he was my, but I really took to it. Fortunately, my parents had a good sense of humor, and they were just happy that I was reading something, so it might as well be Hot Rod Magazine, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I got into it, and eventually building my own cars and going on from there.
You've been involved in so many things. And, back in the day, you think about my generation, I mean, my kids call me a boomer. I take that badge of honor, but they like to tease me a little bit about it. But back in my old days, and I think even part of your early career, people kind of locked into one business, one career, and they stayed with it. But you did what is very popular today. You've been involved in a lot of different things. So why did you choose these multiple paths? Was it part of your process of growing and learning and getting involved in as many things as you could?
I suppose, really the common thread in almost everything that I've done over the years, of course, is the automobile and the love of cars. When I liked college so well that I had to go twice, because I stepped out for a while in the service and came back and finished. But when I got out, it was the middle of the Jimmy Carter recession. I was convinced I wouldn't get a job doing anything. So I was sending resumes wherever I could. And lo and behold, I got the job at Young and Rubicam in the media department. And, one of the things that was great about Young and Rubicam is they had Lincoln Mercury as an account, which of course I went there and didn't get to work on that. I got to work on hairspray or something.
Oh, bummer.
But it got me close to it. And in the course of doing that, I just kind of quickly recognized that the people selling me advertising were having a whole lot more fun than I was having planning it. And I thought, well, gee, if I could work for anybody and any magazine, what would it be? And that was Hot Rod. So that's what I went out and pursued.
So going to work for Peterson, you must have thought you landed in heaven.
Oh, absolutely. And what a terrific company, and all of the just wonderful people, many of whom I still know to this day. And, I had the great privilege of meeting and working for and getting to know Mr. Peterson, Bob Peterson, and his wife, Margie. He was quite a steward, and all of his management people were as well. I mean, we were really taught the right way to do business, and it was very helpful to me in my career.
Well, it's very cool. And to be around that, and obviously you stayed there for a long time because you were having a lot of fun, and he had his fingers in a lot of things. Let's fast forward to what you're up to today. I'd love for you to talk more about the company you're a part of, Radial Equity Partners. So what is it you guys are doing there?
Well, they're one of those private equity firms that everybody hears so much about, and I say that laughingly because these guys actually are not dreaded. They're awesome people. In the course of being at Peterson, which, as you are aware, sold several times while I was there, I think I went through 5 different ownership changes of that company. And as a result, I got exposed to a lot of the good and bad things about private equity when they make moves to buy a company. So recognizing that the publishing business had changed forever, which it did, it's basically evaporated. I decided to take what I had learned in that and use it as best I could to help companies going through that process in the aftermarket. So Radial is a group that is into manufacturing operations and focused on the aftermarket specifically. So they own Coker Tire, they own Paragon, Corvette Central, Zip, and also Dynajet.
Wow.
And we are working on other possibilities, but I'm just trying to help them identify companies that strategically make sense, and then help companies that we get to know and welcome into the family, make them comfortable with it, and make it all work. And it's going very well because these guys do it right. They buy companies and hold it for a much longer period of time, and they bring assets to it as opposed to trying to strip out cost.
Yeah, we've seen the bad side of that. Well, it's very, very cool. And that obviously is a nice little segue into your massively long involvement with SEMA. I just had the CEO of SEMA on the show, and SEMA is one of these organizations that, boy, they've helped so many companies like the companies that Radial owns and so many others, and all this whole group of people that have been involved. I've been to, I think, 32 SEMA shows now, something like that. I've worn out a lot of socks, that's for sure, walking those halls. Talk a little bit about why you've gotten involved in SEMA. And of course, SEMA of the year. I mean, SEMA Hall of Fame. I mean, SEMA runs in your blood, I think.
Sure, that's a fact. I mean, right up through chairman of the board, which was one of my bigger honors of my career. I think I've said this before, and it's very, very true. I mean, to this day, when I walk into the Las Vegas Convention Center for the SEMA show, I still, the hair on the back of my neck goes up, and I say, somebody pinch me. I'm actually getting paid to be here.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I mean, it's really fabulous because it's millions of square feet full of stuff that nobody has to have, but everybody is passionate about and really wants. And that, to me, is the beauty of what we get to do for a living. We make a lot of people happy, and they're having fun. It's productive. Everybody wants to be there. Everybody enjoys being together. That's really what drove my involvement to get it more involved with SEMA itself. Plus in the course of doing what I did for a living, I knew so many companies and so many people. It was a chance to just extend that and keep working with them on a more regular basis. And that just one thing led to another. I started off with ARMO and moved on through being on the board. You mentioned Mike Spagnola, who's the CEO. Mike was on the board with me at one time. It's been a lot of fun and definitely a big honor for me to help keep the industry moving and be part of it.
Oh, there's so much that what SEMA does. And for you listeners, if you missed my talk with Mike last week, 2 weeks ago, actually, go back and give it a listen, because there's even in my talk with Mike, there's a lot more about SEMA I didn't know that they do, that they help so many different parts of the industry and companies evolve and grow. And with this rapidly changing EV world that we're living in now, there's a whole entirely new group of challenges, but opportunities that are coming up in that world as well. I'd like to talk about what I call our driving inspirations, people that are mentors, influential. You've been around some massively influential mentor type folks. Of course, you mentioned Mr. Peterson. Is there somebody that stands out, if just for today at least? I know this might be a hard question, to pick somebody that was massively influential in your past that helped you move forward in your career and your life?
Well, besides Mr. Peterson, I would say my dad. And, that's probably a common answer, but I was asked this question when I got inducted into the Hall of Fame at SEMA, and I said the remarkable thing about my dad is he was my size. He was a great big guy, and he absolutely hated cars. He didn't want anything to do with cars. But he, while he was a pretty strict disciplinarian, he was also a guy who would hug and kiss his sons in public back in the early 60s and didn't care what people thought. And he allowed me to turn his garage into a body shop because he knew it was important to me. And he gave me a safe place to be and a safe place to do it. How could I ever repay that? I mean, that was fundamental to everything I did. So certainly my dad. Industry-wise, I could go on. I could spend 3 hours talking about all the contributions that Robert E. Peterson gave to the industry, including the creation of SEMA itself. I was gifted the original ledger from the first SEMA show that was a handwritten ledger by Gigi Carlton, who was Bob Peterson's longtime assistant. And I, in turn, donated that to SEMA. It hangs in the SEMA offices in Diamond Bar. But, he made all that happen, and he always had time to help you, even though he was like the guy, which was remarkable. So he funded the first office in Washington, D.C. for SEMA. And then just kind of quietly did it. He never, tooted his horn. He just did it because he knew it was important. So just a fabulous guy.
Absolutely. You've had this career around your passion for automobiles for so long. If a young person was to come to you and ask advice about how they get into the automotive career these days, how would you advise them?
Well, maybe it's overstated, but follow your passion would be my first piece of advice. And of course, if you go online, you'll see 20 people that say that's a mistake. But it's
yeah.
It certainly worked for me. And find a way to make it happen for yourself. And what is it about automotive that you're the most passionate about? Are you a mechanic? If so, be a mechanic. We need lots of those. Do you like writing about them? Do you like taking pictures of them? Do you like doing shows about them? And just find a way to get some experience in that so that you can keep pursuing ultimately where you want to get to. But by all means, pursue it.
It's well listen to advice. And I worked for 11 years in the advertising world before I got involved in the last company I was a part of, which was a startup that I was there for 20 plus years, and it was all automotive focused. But I remember back in the days of being creative, and I wanted to be creative, being at a photo shoot and looking at the photographer that I'd hired. I was directing the photo shoot, working with the clients and designing this ad campaign. And I looked at him and I said, "Can you believe we're getting paid to do this?" And he just smiled, and he was much older than me. He'd been shooting for many years. I was in my mid-20s. And he goes, "Mark, you figured out the secret sauce to life at a young age. Not too many people figure that out. Do what you love." And every day is, it's got challenges, but it's not like work. It's fun. And that makes you want to get up and go do it. So I think that follow your passion is true. I think for many people, young people, sometimes they have a hard time figuring out what that passion is, which for me was easy. It sounds like for you, it's cars. We love cars. So, but you got to figure that out first. Of course, this life of bliss that we've lived does have challenges. So I'd love for you to share a huge challenge that maybe you faced throughout your career, your life. But more importantly, now that you've gone through it, you're kind of happy that you had to deal with that tough time. So is there one thing you can maybe share with us today that kind of set you back, but now when you look back, you're kind of glad you had to go through it?
Yeah, you bet. I did leave the automotive world for a time, and that was after I think the initial sale when Peterson decided he was going to sell the first time. I left because I couldn't imagine anybody doing it other than him. And I decided I was going to go off and be a real magazine guy, quote unquote. So I moved to New York and went to work for Condé Nast, which is the publisher of GQ, Vogue, and we launched a magazine called Details, which was a Gen X version of GQ. And I worked in New York City in the magazine business. And I lived on my boat on the Hudson River and had a good time. And,
wow.
And I, cut my teeth in the real serious ad business in New York and did well at it. But when I got a phone call after the second person bought the company and was also in the process of acquiring Dobbs in Florida, and they said, "Hey, a guy named John Cobb, who is an old workmate of mine, and he was kind enough to call me and say, 'Hey, do you want to come back and help us run some of the magazines in Florida?'" I said, "You're talking to a guy who just spent a winter on a boat in New York City, and it's cars versus the new suits in the New York men's fashion shows. I think, yeah, I'll come back, John." So I came back. But that experience really gave me the perspective of, could I do something else? Yes. Was it really my passion? No. Cars were my passion. Follow your passion. So that's what I did and came back, and it was fabulous.
Well, sometimes it's good to branch out and try other things and give them a test, but realize you can go back, and you can't go back to what you love. And I guess in the long run, you're certainly glad you did, right?
Oh, without a doubt, and it's the best thing I ever did. So, and in the process of doing all of that and going through several more ownership changes of the company, it also it taught me a lot about business and how to do things right in an acquisition and how to do them wrong, and that's been helpful to me doing what I'm doing now. So.
No doubt. Now, I know you're a car guy, always been a car guy. I'd love for you to share one special vehicle story with me today, something that really stands out, and maybe share something special about that ride. So let's start with what's the car? Or is it a bike or a motorcycle or an airplane?
Well, I'll tell you two stories. I'll tell you one that's pretty funny first, and it's about my friend Dave Smith with Factory 5 Racing. Do you know Factory 5?
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah.
So Dave and I are all friends. And, as I mentioned, I'm a fairly big guy, and Dave was always after me to do a car. And I always loved his cars because they're fantastic. You talk about a brilliant piece of engineering. I said, "Dave, I love your cars, but there's just no way I'll fit in one. it's just impossible. I will not fit. And he said, I am positive you'll fit. In fact, I'm so positive I'm going to send one down to you at the company studio. And if you'll do a photo shoot for me, I'll send it down there. And I said, fine, we want to do a story on you anyway. And he said, you get in this car, the driver's a big guy, no problem. So he sent a Daytona down.
Ooh.
And we rolled it into the hot rod shop in El Segundo. And I had, guys working in the shop, and I'm, like a kid on Christmas morning seeing this thing roll in. I'm all excited because I'm finally going to be able to see if I can fit in one of these comfortably enough to build one. And I got in it, and it took me almost 30 minutes to get out of it because I couldn't get out of it.
I was going to say, is that because you couldn't get out, or you just loved it so much you didn't want to get out? But
it was a little of both. But I shoehorned myself into it, and then I was, you can't put a lot of weight on the door to lever yourself out of the seat, the fiberglass. So I ended up probably looking absolutely ridiculous. End up in the air trying to get out of the car, and I eventually did. But that ended my discussions about building one. But he's a great guy and makes great products. But anyway, so there's that story.
Yeah.
Other great story, I think you and I were talking about cars that I've had in the past. I think I sent you a picture of my 69 Mustang that it started life as a coupe, and I always like fastbacks better, like most people.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, this car is perfect, but what would it take to turn it into a fastback? So I happened to be talking with David Freiberger, who, as you know, is quite a media star these days with Roadkill and his other stuff. But he was my editor of Hot Rod at the time, and he and I had just finished doing a story that we called the Crate Camaro, where we built a 69 Camaro using nothing but reproduction sheet metal and parts, every part on the car. So we decided, okay, what would it take to turn a coupe into a fastback? And my car was the first one and the donor for that. And we worked with some companies to develop, I think there were 10 parts that weren't made, which we fabricated. And now all of those are in production. So you can take basically any generation Mustang and turn it into a fastback. But the amazing thing about it is all of the subtle things that you don't realize, like the A-pillars on the windshield are raked back a couple of degrees more in a fastback than a coupe, which means the windshield is different, and so on and so forth. So once you get into it, it's a little more intense than you think it is. But that ended up being a very fun car and fun just to kind of have a concept of, okay, what if we could do this? And we did it, and it came out great.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Is that a dark blue?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, it's gorgeous. It's fun. The Mustang is one of those cars that everybody loves it. I had a 66 fastback that had been built into a GT350 clone, and I drove it to work every day for several years. And I always say all the cool cars I've had over the years, that car garnered the most attention and thumbs up of any car I've ever had. It was just, everybody loved it. You get gas and everybody come over and have a Mustang story. It was just a delightful car. A little dicey to drive on the rainy, cold, slick streets in the wintertime around here. For sure, I had to be a little careful with the right foot on the throttle, but that car's stunning. So I'll put a picture of that on Doug's show notes page on the Cars Yeah website so you can get a glimpse of what we're talking about. Turned out awesome. So I'm going to be your car psychologist today. I do this with all my guests, Doug. I'm going to crawl into your head a little bit here. If you were reincarnated as a vehicle, what would you be and why?
Oh, wow. What would I be and why?
Yeah. Now, this isn't what you want to be. You got to kind of dig deep into the man in the mirror here as to who you really are.
Well, let's say a 1965 Buick Riviera.
Ooh, nice. Okay. And why?
With the GS model, it was two four-wheels, so dual quad nail head motor, so it was powerful. But that was really, I would argue, one of the first attempts to make a fast car out of a luxury car. So it had power windows, seats, all of the fancy stuff, air conditioning. It was comfortable, but it was also fast. And it had some groundbreaking stuff like hidden headlights. And I've owned two of them, and I've unfortunately had the pleasure of fixing those hidden headlights on both cars.
A little bit of challenge there, huh?
Yeah. So they had perfected that technology, but that was it. And why? Again, because it was fast. It was a performance car, but it was also comfortable.
Yeah, those things are just cool. And I've seen some builds people have done, not only restoring them to originality, but also doing some very custom stuff with those things. Yeah, they're just awesome. I mean, they're beautiful cars. And I would imagine when that car came out, it was probably an eye popper for a lot of people going, whoa, what is this? But Buick is known for that. I mean, you go back to the 59 Electra, which was pretty radical when you think about it, how that front end of that thing. But of course, the Riviera was stunning. So, okay, I could see that. Yeah. I mean, it's it's a bigger car. You're a bigger guy, but, still can get out there and do it. So I love it. Very, very nice. I like to ask people how they like to give back. Obviously, I mean, your involvement with SEMA in the industry, I mean, it seems like your entire career has been a lot of giving back. Is that how you view what you've done with many aspects of your career, especially relating to SEMA and how much that organization helps others?
Certainly with SEMA, but I would also say that anything that I've given of myself to SEMA and all the related things has paid back tenfold, and how good it feels, because I get a tremendous amount of happiness seeing other people get excited about cars and doing all of the fun stuff we get to do. And then in the course of things with SEMA, we've had the great pleasure of being able to help some pretty solid organizations like the Austin Hatcher Foundation, which is one of SEMA's three charities. We brought Austin Hatcher on board while I was active on the board. And the people who run Austin Hatcher are Jim and Amy Jo Osborne. Jim is in addition to being a world-class spine surgeon, he also happens to be an SCCA racer and an old friend. He and Amy Jo had a son who died of cancer as an infant, and they started this organization to help families who are dealing with that disease, and it's all automotively based. So they build cars with the kids and families. They have therapy built around doing stuff with cars, and it's terrific. And then, of course, Child Help is another one, and Victory Junction Camp with the Petties is another charity of SEMA. So I've had the pleasure of working with all three organizations, and they're awesome. And then, of course, just doing, like I said, doing all of the stuff with SEMA too. I mean, it's when you see the smile on somebody's face when they look at a car, or they're walking out with an armload of parts to go work on their car with their family. I get a lot of satisfaction in that.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, Jim was a guest on Cars Yeah back in 2018, I believe, is when he was a guest on the show and shared what they're doing there. Yeah, awesome guy. Wonderful story. And of course, the Petties had Richard Petty's son on the show and talked about what they're doing for people. So, so many ways. I think, the car world, the car people, and you think about all the Concours events, they always are raising money to help others. It's just tremendous. So some great charity groups there that SEMA and you are involved with. How about a great book that you'd like to share with our listeners? We love books here at Cars Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Could be business, could be car, could be self-help.
I don't know. I'm sitting here looking at a book called Hot Rod Empire. which is a book that was published a couple of years ago about Peterson and how the whole company started, and the times with Wally Parks while he was at Hot Rod before he went and started NHRA. So I'd recommend that. I mean, to somebody who's interested in the industry, there's a lot of little tidbits and pieces about characters that they may or may not have met. That's pretty fascinating. So it's worth a read.
Yeah, Matt Stone was the author of that book. He's been a guest here on the show, and of course, it definitely talks about the Peterson Empire, hot rods, and everything that was built around it. So it's an awesome book. If you're a car person, you should have it on your shelf for sure. So I'm going to enable you today, before I let you go, to go on what I call is the ultimate drive. I'm going to park any car in the world in your driveway. You can take it anywhere, but here's the key. You can take anybody you would like with you, even somebody who's no longer with us, which opens up a world of interesting conversation. So what does this ultimate drive look like for you if I could wave my magic wand?
Well, let's see. My ultimate drive, I would say let's make it in an Auburn Bowtail Speedster.
Oh, nice.
Because that's one of the most beautiful cars in the world, in my opinion. And I would have to say that, and I'm not joking here, I'd have to say I'd love to take my wife on that ride.
Nice.
I was a widower up until a few years ago, and proof that even a blind hog can find an acorn.
Now, you're being a little self-deprecating there, but I'm so happy for you. I've had several friends who have gone through that and kind of feel like there'll never be anybody else in their lives, and yet the acorn shows up. So
there you go.
Congratulations.
Yeah, well, thank you. And we've had several good years together now, and I've had great fun showing her this wonderful automotive world that I have been a part of, and I'd love to take her on that drive and show her some more.
That's a wonderful story. I just called a friend of mine. He's been on the show before too, Wayne Craig, who went through the same thing, and he's now engaged to be remarried. He just last week turned 76. Still very active in the car world. He works as a docent on the lawn at Pebble and other big events like La Jolla Concours and others. He's involved in the Ironstone Concours. And he's working at Lodi Medical Center. Yeah, and the same thing. He goes, wow, I never thought there'd be somebody else in my life, but here we go. And he's taking her to car events, and they're having tours together. And so that's a wonderful story. That's awesome. I love it. You've taken us on a wonderful journey today. I knew this would be fun, Doug, and I'm so happy we were able to connect. I want to do a shout out. Thank you to our mutual friend, Mark Osmondson. He's the one who connected me with Doug. Mark he's a past guest, but he's brought many, many inspiring automotive enthusiasts to this show. So thank you, Mark, very, very much. Before I let you go today, Doug, could you share maybe some words of inspiration, a quote or success quote or something that might leave us with some great thoughts today?
I don't know. I just encourage everybody, as we talked about, follow your passion and stick to it. Good things will happen.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes you got to find your way, but good things definitely will happen. I've talked to over 2,000 people now on Cars Yeah that have all done just that. They figured out a way to create a life around their passion. It can be done, and there's so many different ways to do it. So I appreciate you sharing your story. How can people learn more about Radial Equity Partners and you?
Well, you can find both of us online. Radial Equity Partners is online. You can take a look at the different companies that we've invested in, and I should be listed there as an advisor. And of course, you can also find more information about me on the SEMA Hall of Fame website. And SEMA in general, if you type in Doug and SEMA, you'll come up with it. And it's there, good, bad, and ugly.
It's all good. I can guarantee you, listeners. Doug, thank you for spending some time with me today, sharing your life. What a life it's been, what a life it is, and what a life that you have ahead of you down the road. Until you and I talk again, I'll see you down the road or at the next SEMA show.
All right, Mark. Thanks. I'll see you then.
Definitely. This has been great. 20, 50, or 100 years from now, will there be a workforce to care for the collector vehicles we love? With auto shop programs disappearing across the country, it's a question we enthusiasts have to ask. That's why I support the RPM Foundation, which exists to ensure that the critical skills necessary to preserve and restore these vehicles aren't lost to time. One of the many ways RPM which is short for Restoration, Preservation, and Mentorship, is accomplishing this goal is through workforce development initiatives. The RPM Apprenticeship Program enables the next generation of artisans to earn a living while they learn the craft of restoring and preserving these vehicles directly from industry professionals. The Endangered Skills Program documents the process of masters training future craftspeople on a variety of critical skills in danger of being lost forever. For more information on how the RPM Foundation is driving the future of the collector vehicle skills trade, visit RPM Foundation today. They're one of the charities of choice here on Cars Yeah!
Thank you so much for joining us on today's ride here at Cars Yeah! Drive on over to carsyeah.com to find show notes and inspiring automotive fun. Download your free copy of Filler Up, a fun book filled with gorgeous photographs of fuel filler fun, including quotes from more inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Download your copy today, and we'll see you next time on Cars Yeah!